Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. We're approaching the end of this sitting of Parliament. We only have a very short period left before Parliament rises for the summer recess, and there is still unfinished business left to be done. There is still business left to be done if we are going to truly fulfill the promise that we all made to protect Canadians for the entire length of this pandemic. Specifically, there are two things that I wanted three that I wanted to mention today. And I've mentioned them before, but we have not seen the action that we need. We have not seen the government respond as it should. And so we will continue to press for them for as long as the need exists. First, the need for a residential tenant support benefit. More and more reports are coming out that there is a crisis looming in terms of evictions for tenants who are low income, many of whom who are frontline workers, many of whom who are essential workers, who have either had their jobs cut, their hours cut, and are falling dangerously into arrears. This is a slow-moving train wreck that is heading toward us, and we have been warned time and again by national housing advocates that we need to bring in a support benefit for these low-income residential tenants, or as soon as the moratoriums are lifted, we can expect to see an unprecedented wave of evictions. We have created, and rightly so, a benefit for commercial tenants. The federal government has done that, despite that being provincial jurisdiction. And so there really is no impediment for the government to act here if they decide to make it a priority. The second is the CERB, the CRB. The CRB is undergoing two profound changes within the next few months. First, next month, the government is intending to reduce that benefit from $500 a week to $300 a week in the month of July. For those who will continue to rely on that benefit for the foreseeable future, for those whose jobs are not going to be bouncing back first, and those are the people that we need to think about the most, the people in the low-paying jobs, the precarious jobs, the people in the seasonal jobs. For those people who are going to continue to need the CRB, I'm saying that $300 a month is not enough, not nearly enough for people who are still struggling to get by during this pandemic. We should extend the lifetime of the CRB until the end of the year, as other countries who have provided these emergency benefits have done. And we should also make sure that the benefit is not reduced in the month of July, as has been proposed in Budget 2021. And finally, students. Students who have throughout this crisis been treated like second-class citizens, students who have been left behind to struggle with mounting debt, with mounting tuition, with mounting uncertainty and anxiety, the students who are still in need of our help and support. The unemployment rate in the month of May for students was almost 25%. That means 1 in 4 students was unemployed during key working months for students. 1 in 4. And while this is better than the 40% rate of last year, it is still almost double the rate of previous years, of the 2019 rate, for instance. Without the return of the Canada Emergency Student Benefit for students, we know that there are students, and particularly low-income students, racialized students, marginalized students, who either will have to put their studies on hold or who will not be able to return to school at all. I'll tell you from my personal experience as the daughter of a mother who was a teacher, but who had 4 children and sent money back to family in the Caribbean, that if I had not worked every single day in the summer, I would not have been able to afford my education, which I had to pay for myself. We have already lost about 2 months of earning for students. So even if the jobs do return in July or in August, what will we do for the money that has been lost, for the earning months that have been lost to those students? And so we need to bring back the Canada Emergency Student Benefit in the short term. In the long term, we need to be moving towards post-secondary education that is universal, that is tuition-free. We need to be forgiving the federal portion of student debt. Alors, il y a 3 enjeux qui restent à discuter avant la termination de cette session. En fait, pas 3 enjeux, mais 3 enjeux urgents. D'abord, on sait qu'il y a des locataires de faible revenu qui continuent de ne pas arriver à payer tout leur logement chaque mois. On risque qu'il aura une grande vague d'éviction quand le moratoire soit levé. On sait que les personnes les plus à risque sont les personnes avec les emplois de faible revenu, les personnes marginalisées, les personnes racisées, les personnes qui font les travaux essentiels. Le gouvernement fédéral a créé une prestation d'urgence pour les locataires commerciaux. Il n'y a pas de raison alors qu'il ne peut pas le faire pour les locataires de faible revenu qui sont en risque d'éviction. Les avocats, les militants pour les locataires, on a été très clairs sur ce point, que s'il n'y a pas une réponse d'urgence par le gouvernement fédéral, qu'il y aura une énorme crise de logement, une énorme crise et une énorme vague d'éviction. Alors, il faut agir maintenant dans la manière dont nous avons agi pour les locataires commerciaux. Deuxièmement, la prestation d'urgence. Le gouvernement a annoncé en avril qu'il allait couper la prestation presque en moitié dans le mois de juillet à $300 par mois. On sait qu'il y a encore beaucoup de personnes qui auront besoin de cette prestation pour les mois qui viennent. Et sans cette prestation, ils vont être lancés dans une situation d'urgence. Alors, le gouvernement, avec l'aide des autres partis au Parlement, peut assurer qu'il n'y a pas de coupure dans la prestation et que la prestation est élargie jusqu'au fin du mois de décembre. C'est quelque chose qui est nécessaire. Si nous avons encore besoin de la prestation, ça doit être à un niveau vivable. Ça doit être à un niveau vivable. Et finalement, les étudiants. Les étudiants qui ont toujours été traités comme citoyens de deuxième classe pendant la pandémie, les étudiants qui continuent à souffrir, qui continuent à expérimenter des niveaux très élevés de chômage, les étudiants qui sont maintenant, ils se demandent comment est-ce qu'ils vont payer leurs études dans le mois de septembre. Ils n'ont pas de prestations cet été et c'est un problème. Le taux de chômage de mai pour les étudiants était un taux de chômage presque de 25%. Alors, presque un étudiant ou étudiant par chaque 4 étudiants se trouve dans une situation de chômage et probablement dans une situation de crise. Alors, si on veut leur aider, si on veut assurer qu'ils peuvent continuer leurs études, qu'ils ne tombent pas en plus de dettes, il faut leur offrir la même protection qu'on offre aux autres personnes au Canada. Il faut qu'on voit un retour à la prestation. Moi, j'étais quelqu'un qui a payé ses études. J'étais une enfant dans une famille de 4. Ma mère travaillait comme enseignante, mais elle avait 4 enfants et puis elle envoyait de l'argent vers notre famille aux îles des Caraïbes. Alors, moi, j'ai payé mes études et je n'aurais pas pu payer mes études si j'aurais dû passer 2 mois de l'été sans travail. C'était nécessaire de travailler pour toute la longueur de l'été. Alors, on a déjà perdu 2 mois et si il y a un retour à l'emploi en juillet et août, tant mieux. Mais ce ne serait pas suffisant pour assurer que les étudiants, surtout les étudiants marginalisés, racisés, de faibles revenus, ont les fonds nécessaires pour payer les études. Dans le long terme, on appelle comme toujours pour l'abolissement des frais de scolarité pour l'éducation postsecondaire et on veut voir une annulation du dette fédérale que maintenant est une grande source d'inquiétude pour les étudiants. Merci beaucoup.
And we'll now take questions, starting with questions on the phone. A quick reminder, 1 question, 1 follow-up per reporters. Nous allons maintenant prendre les questions en commençant par les questions au téléphone. Comme à l'habitude, une question suivie par journaliste. Opérateur, avons-nous une première question?
Merci. Il n'y a pas de questions enregistrées à ce temps. Je vous retourne la parole.
So we'll now take questions in the room. Lee?
Paul, Lee Berthium, Canadian Press. Nice to see you.
Morning.
I wanted to ask, I'd like to actually hear your thoughts on Ms. Atwin's most recent comments on Israel, which appear to be a significant step back from what she was saying before. And I'm also wondering why you think the Liberals were able to essentially rein in her comments better than you and your party were.
Well, there's a bit of unpacking there. Let me know if I didn't get to all of the parts of your question. With respect to Ms. Atwin and the reining in part, I want to make it extremely clear that Ms. Atwin and I have never had a conversation about Israel and Palestine one-on-one, ever. I had never, while she was an MP for our party, ever asked Ms. Atwin to rein in her comments. I have never sanctioned her in any way for her comments. I did not know that Ms. Atwin was someone who followed Middle Eastern politics closely, to be perfectly honest with you. So we had never had a conversation about Israel and Palestine. She had never expressed any concerns about my position and the statements that our party had produced with respect to that. So I believe that this is a completely manufactured reason for her leaving. And I would say that given the statement that Ms. Atwin made yesterday, it couldn't possibly have been such a closely held belief for her if 4 days later she adopted a position which I think we can all agree is at least if not more moderate than the statements that had been put out by our party. Now, as to why and how the Liberals managed to succeed in having Ms. Atwin do that complete turnabout in her point of view after her having said many times that she would not do so, you will have to ask the Liberals. But we do know that as a party, we've seen that throughout this incident, this moment, that they are cynical, that they are aggressive in pursuit of their majority in the next election, that they are willing to sow division, that they are willing to encourage people to turn against their beliefs, that they will essentially stop at almost nothing in order to secure this majority, even if it means suppressing the views of their newest member, even if it means going after the first Black and Jewish woman to be elected to this role, even if it means creating divisions about a very sensitive issue, which is people's views on the Israeli-Palestinian situation. Even if it meant doing that, they were willing to go that far. And so, you know, they will have to answer how they managed to do this, and Ms. Atwin will have to explain her rationale herself. But I do know, and I have learned the hard way over the last week, that the Liberals certainly will say and do anything in order to perpetuate their power.
When you say, and maybe I missed, you said, you used the word manufactured, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, a manufactured reason for her to leave, or a manufactured crisis to preempt, or to I guess, lead to her decision to leave. Can you expand on that? What do you mean by that when you're saying, are you suggesting that this was a purely political opportunism in some ways, or what exactly are you saying?
Well, what I will say is I encourage people to take a look at the facts and then draw their own conclusions. The things that we have learned over the last few days are that first, that the approaches, again, if the reports are to be believed in the major outlets that have reported on this story, that the discussions with, and also from Liberal sources within their own party, that the discussions with Ms. Atwin began prior to any of the deadly escalation in conflict in the Middle East. Prior to any of that occurring, there were already conversations underway, in which case again, I'm not going to, I'll just say that. I will also say, as I said before, that Ms. Atwin and I have never had a one-to-one conversation about Israel and Palestine. It had only been discussed once prior to her leaving the caucus, when we agreed as a caucus that we would be putting out, as we always do, a statement about conflict. And that is the only time. There was never any clash between us. There was never any conflict. Ms. Atwin had never expressed any strong views on the Israeli-Palestinian situation. And so those are the facts. We also know that on Thursday, when she was asked several times whether the reasons for her leaving were in any way related to me, she said no. She said no twice. And when she was asked whether they related to this conflict, she said that it was a distraction, but she said again that her reasons were related to the community and to her family and to what she thought was best for them. It was only less than 24 hours, but about 24 hours later, when it seemed clear that the reception from her own community, from the leader of the provincial party, and from the public in general was not what had been expected, that the story changed and evolved into this being the central issue. And I would just ask if the central issue of this decision was indeed strongly held views about the Israeli-Palestinian situation, then I would ask, how is it that 4 days later, those strongly held views have changed so much?
And I'll check once more if there is any question on the phone. Perhaps we can have a reminder for the reporters how to register for the question line. Operator?
Thank you. The next question is from Ian Bailey from the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Ms. Paul, we understand there was a meeting last night with the party. Can you tell us about how that meeting went and what conclusions you took from the meeting?
Well, thank you for that question. And yes, I did have a meeting with our members. The members are the people that voted for me just over half a year ago and gave me a really strong mandate. And one of the things that I told them that I was going to be committed to was participatory democracy and making sure that we had a strong, regular contact with each other. And so, of course, there were going to be questions about what happened. And of course, I was going to want to reach out to our members as soon as possible and answer some of those questions. So unlike the Liberal Party, I can't imagine that the Prime Minister would make himself available to all of his members to answer in an unfiltered way the kind of questions that I did. But it's important to us as a party to model our values. So I hope that it went well. I spent about an hour answering the questions from our members. I made it clear that there will be other occasions for me to answer more questions. I recognize that this was a difficult moment, and I extended my willingness to do whatever I needed to do to help us through it. I also said that, again, I recognize and am willing to recognize anything that I might have done to contribute to the situation. It's important for me to grow and learn always as a leader and be humble enough to recognize that. But what I also did tell them is that we have heard from the Liberals' own mouths over the last few days that this was a deliberate, dastardly act by them to sow division between us. This was intended to kneecap us in key ridings in places that they know they need to win if they want their majority. We are surging in the Atlantic provinces. We are within striking distance of winning Minister Leblanc's riding in our own internal polling, and he has seen those same polling results. We have had historic numbers of people applying to be candidates in the next election. The Liberals know all of this, and they have decided to see whether they can undermine my leadership and undermine our party just months before they call the election. This is what they're capable of doing, and they don't mind what the cost is to our democracy, and they don't mind what the cost is to my leadership, and I say shame on them.
As a follow-up, we understand that the Quebec wing has called for your resignation. Wondering if you had any comment on that call?
All I can say is that I received a very strong mandate from our membership just over half a year ago. I was leading as of the first ballot, and I won with a very healthy margin. We had almost 70% of our members turn out for that vote. I believe that I have been given a strong mandate. I believe that I have been given the instructions to work on behalf of Canadians for a green recovery, to work on behalf of Canadians, to ensure that we complete our social safety net and to forge a just society. There are those who, of course, in any party are not happy with the results. As much as you try to bring everyone together, there are those that are going to continue to support others including some of the other candidates who ran. And I would just encourage them again to respect the will of the members who made it very clear who they were seeking to have lead them at this point. We will have an automatic leadership review directly after the next election, as with the other parties, so the members will be able to pass judgment soon enough. It's important for none of us to seek to circumvent the democratic process, and in this case, we have to make sure that the members and their wishes are what we're respecting.
Operator, next question on the phone.
Thank you. Our next question is from Raisa Patel from the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Thanks for your time today. Now that your party is down an MP, how has this changed your approach to seeking out new candidates for the next election?
Well, in terms of getting new candidates for the next election, one of the things that I was elected on was a commitment to diversity. In the previous election, we had run the least diverse slate of candidates of any of the political parties. And I believe very much that one of the reasons that I was elected was that I promised to make that a central feature of my leadership. And I got off the ground, thanks to the work of our staff as well, just up and running as quickly as we could. We launched our Time to Run campaign, which is the first campaign of its kind in Canada, and one that has been lauded by participatory democracy advocates as a breakthrough. We reached out directly to people saying, consider nominating yourself, consider nominating someone in your community, help us to bring more diverse leadership to our next parliament, help us to bring some different kinds of people to our political process, because we have seen throughout this week how necessary it is to have a change in the toxic, cutthroat, winner-takes-all style of politics that we have. And we need new people in politics if we're going to do that. And I'm really pleased to report that we have had hundreds of new people applying to run in nomination contests for us. Hundreds, just in the few months that we have had this campaign going. And it continues to go, and it will continue to go until the writ drops, or until we have a candidate in every riding. We have, the candidates who have said that they are interested in running remain interested in running. And again, these are the things that the Liberal Party knows, and this is what they're going after. We are on track for our most diverse slate of candidates ever. We are on track to demonstrate that we are a strong voice that is needed in the next parliament. And this is exactly the thing that they're afraid of, and the thing that they have gone after in such a cynical and dastardly way.
And as a follow-up, given some of these divisions within your party, how do you rebuild trust among voters to boost the number of seats your party will win?
That is a great question. And I would just say, step by step, day by day. Hopefully everyone's old enough to know that song, Day by Day. It really is, oh Lord, day by day. That really is the way. We did not manufacture this situation, but there is no question that it has caused harm. There is no question that it is going to require some conversations, and that is exactly what I'm here to do. As you heard last night, I had a meeting with our members, many of whom are very active within their communities, and we're there to support them in reaching out and letting people know that we cannot let the Liberal Party succeed in this dastardly deed. We cannot let them succeed by having them suggest that at the time when we are demonstrating that we are strongest, that they will persuade voters that we are weakest. And I am counting on all of you as the press gallery and as the media of our country to tell that story. Look at the timelines of this story. Look at what we have done. Look at our accomplishments, the number of candidates we have recruited, the fundraising we have done, the media attention, both national and international, that we have received over this period. Ask to look at the internal polling, whether from our party or for the Liberal Party, which will tell the story of how we are knocking on the door in PEI, in New Brunswick, in the Greater Toronto area, all of the Liberal stomping grounds that they need to win. The voters should know that. And even without candidates in many of the ridings, voters are responding to our message. And so if we are going to do something special, if we're going to do something different, if we are going to ensure that a different style of politics comes in, one that is more collaborative, one that is more cooperative, one that is kinder, so that it can attract the good people that we need to do the hard work that needs to be done, then we cannot let them succeed in this. And I believe that the voters will see through that. I believe that I have been here long enough now that they know what I stand for. They know I'm here for the issues. And I believe, again, that they will not allow the Liberals to succeed.
And I'll check if there is one last question on the phone, operator.
Thank you. Our last question is from Carmack McSweeney from City News. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about a couple of different topics. We're going to be getting a COVID update today, and we're seeing the number of Canadians getting that second dose rising. I think we're somewhere around 13%, and soon we'll probably hit the 20% mark with the amount of vaccines that are coming into our country. Yet still, we haven't heard from federal health officials on any detailed guidance on what vaccinated people can and can't do. It's so far been status quo. Do you think it's time, with the numbers rising, second doses, and that campaign in full swing, that we get some detailed advice, like we've seen in the U.S. from the CDC, on what people can and can't do once they are fully vaccinated?
Thank you for the question. And you know what? Thank you for asking me about something else. Because we have real issues related to the pandemic, unresolved issues related to this pandemic. And as always, we should be keeping our eye on the ball. The question is a great one, and you may know that our party, since last year, since the fall of last year, has been calling repeatedly for greater coordination of response to the COVID pandemic. We called for an intergovernmental rapid response task force that would coordinate any element of our COVID response that would benefit from being coordinated. This is one of those things. We know that throughout this pandemic that people in Canada have been extremely confused about what they can do and what they can't do and when they can do it. There are competing sources of information. There is the municipal level, there is the provincial level, there is the federal level, and sometimes even the community level. This is something where people need clarity so they can get on with their lives as soon as possible. This is exactly one of the elements of the COVID response that absolutely would benefit from that kind of clear guidelines from an authoritative and definitive source. So I would absolutely encourage the federal government and the Prime Minister to work hand in hand with the other levels of government to come up with a single coordinated guideline system so that people can know what information to rely on, and so that they can have certainty. We are not fully out of the woods yet. We have variants that are presenting themselves, and so we need to make sure that that we are coordinating anything that could benefit from coordination. My recommendation to the Prime Minister and the government in this regard hasn't changed.
And as a follow-up on a different topic, we're seeing, once again, another member of senior military leadership in Canada leaving their post amid controversy after the golfing trip with now former CDS General Jonathan Vance. But we're also seeing, the situation with the Major General Danny Fortin, who is now accusing the Prime Minister, the Defense Minister, and the Health Minister of political interference in his removal from the vaccine distribution post. With so much turnover in military leadership as of late, and the issues around a lot of members of senior military posts that have popped up over the last number of months, do you have any concerns about the structure of the military at all, and whether national security could be compromised in any way, or do you have any concerns about national security given the turnover that we've been seeing in these senior posts?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and to be honest, I have not given thought yet to the national security component of the turnover that you're describing. I have to believe that at least until I know, I read or learn to the contrary, that our armed forces has structures and protocols in place so that whomever is removed or has to leave for a voluntary reason or otherwise has someone who can step into that role and fill that breach so that the kind of concern that you raise doesn't occur. This is really a moment of reckoning for the armed forces. They have recognized that themselves. This is the time to do the hard work, but necessary work of a full audit of our armed forces structure to ensure that systemic discrimination, that any misogyny, that any racial discrimination is identified and eliminated. That work is possible, that work can be done, and it's clear that it is urgently needed. On Canadian Armed Forces Day, I thanked our armed forces sincerely for all they have done for us in general and throughout this pandemic. And I said that the best way that we can thank them, both the federal government and the rest of us, is by ensuring that everyone has a safe workplace if they choose to serve their country in the armed forces.
And one last question in the room. Lee?
Sorry, just one last question. I was hoping to get your quick thoughts on intellectual property waiver for COVID-19 vaccines, what you think of that.
I'm loving these questions. Thank you. So we have said with respect to intellectual property waivers that we absolutely support them. They were used effectively in the fight against HIV. And we know that low-income and middle-income countries have told wealthy countries who have cornered the market on the existing supply of vaccines that this would be a very useful tool to them in getting their vaccination rates up. As of the G7 summit, we know that only 2%, I want to emphasize that again, of people in Africa had been vaccinated. And we know that while the virus continues to circulate, it risks mutating into a variant that we cannot protect ourselves against. So we all have an interest in this. And if this can be part of the solution, then that's great. That said, it is important to remember that what we have been asked to do is to provide doses to the COVAX facility this month. That there is a critical shortage of supply this month that if we don't get ahead of it is going to lead to unintended and catastrophic consequences. And so while we help countries ramp up their manufacturing capacity, we have to deal with the urgent need right now. And Canada's commitment at the G7 falls short of that, and it also is not precise enough. And we continue to fail the global community in terms of our contribution to fighting this pandemic globally. So we need the Prime Minister to say very clearly, we support the patent waivers. He has not said that clearly yet. He has skirted around it. And we need him to say very clearly how many doses we will give and how many we will give before the end of June. Thank you.
And this concludes the press conference. Ceci met fin la conférence de presse. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.